Okay. This is an article that takes a pretty tough stance against React. And I'm going to try and be as fair as I can, because I found myself reading this a couple of times and my bias kicked in and I was like, yeah, let's trash on React, but I'm going to try and not do that. I think there are some things I can kind of disagree with or justify a bit, but I still think it's a very good one for the argument that I'm trying to make here, which is, generally speaking, I still don't like React and I wish it would just go away. Hey, Ray on YouTube. I'm doing well. How are you doing, Ray? Good to see you. Hey, Elko on Twitch. Good to see you, man. Sorting coffee is easy. Grouping it by size, then sorting it by color is hard. Yeah. Hey, Mohai. How are you doing? Good to see you. I hope you're doing well. Anybody else watching anywhere else? Hello. Good to see you all. Do you hate JSX too? Oh, I would almost be okay with React if JSX, if you could assure me that any remnant of JSX was removed from the timeline. Like we just had no recollection that JSX existed. I might actually be okay with React then, as like it would be like a good like offset. JSX is like, it's basically just complicated state management, I guess. It's an orgy. Everyone's touching something, nobody knows what. No, Ray on YouTube. I've never been to Japan. Hey, Chief Multi-Hat had to upgrade Enterprise React app from 2018 to 2024. Also, the backend had to go from Core 3 to 6 and then go to 8 once regression. I hate React. There you go, Chief. Real world experience. Molroy, when I was a pledge in my fraternity, I got locked in a room with Metallica full blast on a repeat and bags of sprinkles dumped on the floor and had to sort them by color for 24 hours. Best sorting of my life. You might want to like call up terminal, like coffee, whatever, terminal.sh or coffee.sh or whatever, and see if you can get a job sorting beans. Yeah, you know what, Bad Cop? I expect someone with as much bash experience as you to say JSX is nice. It's strobe lights, yeah. Okay, let's get into this article. A historical reference of React criticism in 2023. So, it's nice that it's not too old. At the ripe old age of 40, things are much older than I am. Almost everything is much older than I am. There have been a number of criticisms levied at the React project over the years, some of them handled and some of them still wavering in the wind. In this post, I'll summarize the ones that are most prominent in my memory as a way of maintaining a record, primarily for my own use, but maybe you'll find it useful too. If you have others, please send them my way. Oh boy. 9.7 years ago. The 0.7 is critical. It's the crux of the entire argument. From Filament Group. Researching the Performance Costs of JavaScript MVC Frameworks by John Bender, December 12, 2014. To my knowledge, this was the first data-backed criticism of the SPA client-side rendering model. It showed an average React performance baseline of 1.26 seconds to first render on a mobile device over 3G, when performance guidelines recommended a goal of first render in under 1 second. The React popularization of client-side rendering did not exist in a vacuum. It was happening as developers struggled to make this model of client-side React work on an increasingly diverse and demanding World Wide Web mobile device landscape, especially as responsive web design won over M.dot architectures for most web work. I'm reminded of Mark Zuckerberg famously admitting that Facebook bet too much on HTML5 for mobile. Although I haven't seen a connection between that 2012 quote and React's initial release in 2013. There might not be. In the post, John states, there are practical approaches we can already use today to reliably produce very fast rendering times, but they work best when HTML content is delivered from the server side rather than generating it solely on the client. That approach benefits many areas of user experience aside from performance alone. The above quote seems incredibly prescient in hindsight and still somehow relevant to modern-day React discourse as they finally begin to pivot away from create React app. But notably, 9.7 years after the blog post was written, that pivot is of now only an idea, which is a GitHub kind of, I guess, something that hasn't been pulled in, I suppose. Currently, the React documentation still recommends client-side rendering. If you're learning React or creating a new single-page app, use Create React App. Now, I guess things are changing with React server components, but that leads into a different argument about whether or not JavaScript is really a good thing to be running as a web, kind of like a web component inside of a server. Like, I'm kind of botching the explanation there, but that's generally, it's a different argument than this. It hasn't improved with the new beta React docs either. If you're learning React, we recommend Create React App. It is the most popular way to try out React and build a new single-page client-side application. It is interesting that they have anointed Next.js as the official chosen full-featured framework moving forward in the beta documentation. I'm sure it has nothing to do with Next.js 13 being the real React 18 release. Now, the issue here is that there's kind of like a jump to a conclusion, but I can kind of see what's being stated here. I might even actually kind of agree with it, but it's a very strong case without an actual like definitive like this is really what's going on. April 2015, 9.4 years ago. Apparently the screenshot doesn't exist. The DOM is not slow, your abstraction is. I actually remember this article. I don't know if it's still up and running. It seems to be, yes. And this article led me to one where somebody in 2017, I want to say, created like several thousand div elements as sprites animated at the same time in your browser using just plain old JavaScript and just focused on making it as performant as possible. And it's just div elements and JavaScript. And it was blinking fast. So I think the idea, I do wholeheartedly agree. The idea that the DOM was ever slow, I don't think that was actually true. I think it was only slow in very specific circumstances. And then React was created to kind of solve those specific circumstances. And then it got bloated into a panacea framework. So it kind of overreached. However, let's keep going. Well, it turned out that React here at least worked. Not on Android 2.3, only on WebOS. But it delivers the worst performance compared with underscore, I remember underscore, paperclip, or my DOM version. July 2015, 9.2 years ago. React plus performance. For mobile, there's a remarkable performance cost to using React over not doing so, and the cost is so high as to be reasonably prohibitive. React has significant costs, especially on mobile. React has a lot of computational work required to do all of its checks. On mobile, the cost is far higher than I think is reasonable. And in the second to last stream I did, we went over some statistics that I think showed that this is still true. And it's not just React. It's the kind of like the bloat of JavaScript is still causing far more than reasonable costs on mobile. Mobile is being like vastly underserved. I really enjoyed using React, but I wouldn't personally use it on an app I'm building. I just don't think it would be fast enough. June 2016, 8.2 years ago. Thomas A. Powell notes that in June 2016, React's homepage was changed to remove copy touting the performance benefit of virtual DOM with a pivot to a focus on efficiency instead. Prior to this change, it declared, React abstracts away the DOM, giving a simpler programming model and better performance. I mean, I don't know. That's kind of sketch, yo. When React is like, let's just change it. 8.1 years ago, your license to use React.js can be revoked if you compete with Facebook. If you are using or considering using React in a project, you might want to consult a lawyer. Because of the patent clause, you are not allowed to do anything that constitutes as competing with Facebook. If you do take legal actions or in other ways challenge Facebook, your license to use React is immediately revoked. Your license is also revoked if you have any legal disputes. If you have legal disputes with any other company using React. Now, whether or not that's changed, and I believe that it has changed since, the fact that this was ever a thing, ever, at all, pause for concern. 7.7 years ago. All right, so you're not a beginner or you're not building an app. You know better than to fall into the create React app pit of client-side rendering performance problems and use a React framework that uses server-side rendering, right? Well, not so fast. When everything's important, nothing is. This post was a very early criticism of how server-side rendered frameworks using virtual DOM still block the main thread in a pretty bad way. SSR typically gets you a faster first meaningful paint. First meaningful paint, it would be the first paint. There's first contentful paint, which is what gets rendered on the browser first that has content in it. And then there's first meaningful paint, which is what's rendered first that a user can interact with. Hopefully I got that right. If not, I have egg on my face. That's great for perceived performance, but for libraries, frameworks that recreate the DOM virtually, TTI, time to first interactive, seems to be pushed back, sometimes a long way. I guess the diffing of real DOM to make VDOM is more expensive than starting fresh. The progressive booting section to the author reads as the precursor to Islands architecture, with a special call in both this and the Islands architecture post to make more use of request idle callback in frameworks, which as far as I could tell is not included with React 18 with or without suspense. I think that there are frameworks or extensions or plugins or whatever you want to call them that you can add to React to do this thing. But if you want to take React in a vacuum, this is probably true. Excuse me. August 2017, 7 years ago. React's open source license with a patent clause was classified by the Apache Software Foundation as Category X. Problematic. It's a problematic license, meaning that it could not be used for Apache.org projects. The React team at Facebook posted an explanation doubling down on a licensing choice on August 18, 2017 that had been in use since the project's initial release in 2013. 1 month after Facebook's post, Matt Mullenweg, of WordPress, writes a blog post stating that WordPress would divest from React for large, in-progress projects Calypso and Gutenberg. Facebook reversed the decision in September for React v16 a few days later. The patent clause remained in place for many other open source projects at Facebook and all prior versions of React. Now, I will absolutely give credit to React changing course on this when there was a problematic license. Okay, and React is not. It's not like they're the only thing on the planet that has had licensing issues. Rust. Okay, it happens. To tie this into the first article that we read at the outset, the problem here is that when you are tied to a library or framework, you're also tied to a lot of the decisions that are made around the technical choices, but also in this case, sometimes the legal choices. And while you could say, I can just stay with an older version that does not introduce new problems that a new version introduces. Sure, but you can always be screwed any number of other ways. I mean, as a human being, you have a lot of orifices, and any one of them is up for grabs by a perv. I'm just channeling my inner tech pool. 6.9 years ago, Rod Dodson filed RFC, Plan for Custom Element Attributes Properties in React 17, 18, 19, noting compatibility issues between web components, a core fundamental built-in aspect of web browsers, and React. Currently, React 18.2.0 passes 0 out of the 14 of the advanced tests on the Custom Elements Everywhere tests. An experimental build of React is available, but it is not, and at this point may never ship in a stable release. This may have changed with some recent versions. I have not looked into this, but this is quite shocking. 6.9 years ago, the Netflix UI engineering team tweeted, Primogen mentioned, removing client-side React.js but keeping it on the server resulted in a 50% performance improvement on our landing page, which included a photo of a talk slide that read, by getting rid of React and moving to plain JavaScript, we saw a 50% reduction in our time to interactive metric. April 2020, 4.4 years ago. The cost of JavaScript frameworks, which is something we read, I believe, in the second to last stream. A study of 4.3 million desktop and 5.4 million mobile URLs showed that React sites spent far more scripting-related CPU time on the main thread than sites built with Angular, Vue.js, or jQuery. While Angular sites shipped more JavaScript than React sites, they, Angular, actually spend less time on the CPU. Much less time. September 2021, 3 years ago. This is JS is coming to next from Guillermo. Oh man, I botched the pronunciation of that. I'm really sorry. I remember this tweet pretty vividly even now. What an exciting possibility, and soon. The tweet was posted on September 13, 2021, a full year before Next.js v13 shipped on October 25, 2022. Astute readers might note that Next.js v13 did not ship with, I don't know how to pronounce that, 0.js. The Next.js v13 bundle size was 44 KB larger than v12. About half of one React library larger, in fact. Guillermo, thank you, Mulroy. That's your boss. There you go. As an aside, I'm curious how much of this had to do with miscommunicated expectations around React server components, given the criticisms also levied by the Hydrogen team at Shopify. And then an update as of February 26, 2023. Previously, this section incorrectly stated the Remix team as the origin behind issues with server components. Notably, 2021, Guillermo is a welcome pivot from 2013 Guillermo, confidently stating that single-page JavaScript-driven apps are the future, though 2023 Guillermo seems to have jumped the shark. We might also remember that these frameworks are recommended by the React team on the official documentation for content sites, and that Next.js, Gatsby, and Remix have long used the blog site as the quintessential starter project in their respective getting started documentation. Here are a few baseline bundle sizes. Next.js v13 was 90 KB compressed, 272 KB uncompressed as of October 2022. Remix was 67.7 KB compressed. Next.js v2 was 72.2 KB compressed, 228 KB uncompressed. That's a lot. Bad cop, just cache it. Write me a bash script for that. And then we'll cache it all. Okay. Ryan Carniato. I have known Ryan in the past briefly. JavaScript framework to do MVC size comparison. A great analysis of how different frameworks grow in relation to application size. So you can see there's a vendor size and then there's component size, right? And these are broadly compressed. Alex's goal was 5 seconds TTI on a slower device and network. For some industries like e-commerce, that target should be more like 3 seconds. Actually, it should be more like 1. 70 KB minus 25 KB is equivalent to around 45 KB budget. How can a larger library like React even compete? I do want to also call out a similar but far more comprehensive and maintained analysis of framework bundle sizes done at webcomponents.dev. Now, bundle sizes have been have gone up and down. They varied depending on the approach of the library. What I care about probably more than bundle sizes at this point is performance, because I think bundle size, I actually kind of want these bundle sizes to be large because it kind of makes my point. You have more stuff. The library is supposed to solve more problems. It has more algorithms that are supposed to solve things for you so that you don't have to solve them, which is supposed to make them more efficient and better than anything that you can produce at a lower bundle size written, say, by yourself. But in fact, I think the data bears out, and we'll get into it, that these things are way slower. They don't just come with an increased bundle size under the promise that they're going to solve stuff for you. They actually don't solve things for you. They make everything slower. They might make you feel nice about how much slower and how much bigger they are, but that's about it. February 2023, Alex Russell, The Market for Lemons. This post includes a breathtaking array of receipts, especially in the Sandy Foundation section. I won't attempt to summarize them here, but it's definitely worth a read. And so this particular article, I am including in my Enlightened Programming version of the live stream that I did, which is a condensed version of the live stream. This is an extra thing because I'm going to charge like $1 or $2 for access to all the live stream, not just individual ones. It's just that this stuff takes time to get through, and I'm hoping that it's useful to somebody. And so I want to be able to pay for some of the time spent doing this. And so as a result of paying for it, I'm going to include some extra goodies for people who pay for the extra content. So this is one of the articles that's included that's going to be included. It's an extra thing that you don't get as part of the live stream. And it is definitely worth a read. An analysis of core web vitals across 9.3 million websites as of February 6, 2023 shows that core web vitals for both React and Next.js, they both perform worse than the aggregation of all other sites in the archive for both mobile and desktop. I want to read this again. Across 9.3 million websites as of February 6, 2023, the core web vitals for React and Next.js show that they perform worse than the aggregation of all other sites in the archive for both mobile and desktop. Currently, only 26% of sites using Next.js have good core web vitals. This is lower than React at large, 32.8%, and the entirety of all sites in the dataset, 39%. August 2023, things you forgot or never knew because of React. October 2023, why I won't use Next.js by Kent Dodds. This has some hot takes. I don't agree with all of them. I'm pretty sure there's been some Twitter wars about this one too. Kent lists a host of problems with Vercel's Next.js and why I won't use Next.js. And many of those criticisms aren't limited to Next.js, but levied more broadly at the React ecosystem. I can kind of agree with some of them. This has been read before. I don't think it's. I just don't think it has. I don't know. I'll see. Maybe I'll add it into a future stream. So that's essentially the article, and then there's some extra ones about whether or not React is actually faster versus vanilla JavaScript or whatever. There's also CSS and JS, but holy crap, that's a whole other thing. I'm not going to get into it. So, okay, so that's this article.